Right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, family, from wherever you are joining us from. I welcome you back once again to the World Family Forum. I want us to do a quick thing. We are just 9 participants. If we take the speaker, myself, and the facilitator, we are how many? 5. Please, let's invite our families, our friends. This is family talk. So let's invite our friends and families to quickly join, remind them, probably they've forgotten, remind them that we've started. And today we have our prof in our midst. He's going to take us through the family dilemma. Yes, it's been 3 days we've been hosting this program, the family dilemma. And the first day we had Dr. Eugene coming our way with the topic, give and take, navigating local realities to get the best of China. And he really took us through a whole lot of things that we can do to get the best of China. Day 2, we also have Rancott Stephen J. Rancott. He also shed more light on traveling but not leaving home. Traveling but not leaving home. And he touched on his personal experience, his relationship with his family. And you can testify that the second day was really interesting. When we closed from here, people didn't want to sign out. It was really, really interesting. Today happened to be the last day, the third day and the last day. And we have in our midst Professor B.M. Imba from Nigeria. He's going to take us through the main theme, the family dilemma, the things we go through as family in the diaspora. What are some of the things? Do they hinder our communication with our families or not? And is it worth it at all to leave our family and then travel to the diaspora for greener pastures? Yeah. Please, will you help me with the projection of our speaker's profile, please? Before you project that, I would like to invite, my name is Ruth from Poma Anefi Gordon. I happen to be your moderator. I'm so sorry, I nearly forgot that. I'm Ruth, and I'm going to be your host for tonight again. But before the introduction of our main speaker, I would like to invite my prof, I fondly call him Prof, OD, to come and tell us something. Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Sister Ruth. It's a beautiful thing to be here together again today. And it's interesting to know that the conversation is yielding very beautiful fruit. And the efforts being put into this by diverse experts from around the world is not a waste. And we are excited as we welcome the various participants today, and also people who will be viewing this on our YouTube channels and other media platforms where these will be displayed subsequently for global attention. It's such a pleasure to know that the cries we've given about the challenges facing the family and the family unit around the world at this time is getting the attention it deserves. And of course, more work has to be done to make sure that this alarm gets to sound even more effectively to get the attention of diverse leaders in governments, in business, corporate organizations, intergovernmental organizations around the world to do what we have to do about the family to make sure that the family gets the attention it deserves to have. And having noticed that indeed many people are still stuck in diverse scenarios and being unaware of several arrangements that are on ground in terms of the sustainable development and the the various aspects, and particularly the social dimension under which the family falls. And of course, it's known, according to existing research, that the social dimension of sustainability has not received the type of attention it deserves. And I feel so pleased that my PhD had something to do with this, even though it was a PhD that's domiciled within the Department of Environmental Science and Engineering in Fudan University. It had a touch on this social dimension, which sparked my interest in things of this nature. And I have seen that play out very beautifully over time, seeing that this is a space that must be given attention because of the impact it has on the future of humanity. And we're emphasizing today again that humanity has no immunity for extinction. We could as well be extinct or go extinct like several other animals that are going extinct in recent years. And research has it that several animals, even on a daily basis, are going extinct. And many of these have not been studied effectively to know what they are about. We humans, we're just one of the species, according to science. And we could as well go extinct if we behave carelessly. Now, to avoid this potential careless behavior of humanity, whereby we seem to be giving very little attention to the family unit, that's why the World Family Forum is working hard alongside several other non-governmental organizations and government agencies to see how we can keep this on the front desk of every individual, because no individual comes from, no individual doesn't come from a family. Everyone comes from a family. And having noted that, it implies that this should be everyone's business. Family should be everyone's business. And we are excited to have been able to bring on board several experts to deal with this matter. And in October, as we've mentioned in the previous days, in October, we're going to have another bigger conference that's hopefully going to involve about 70 countries we're engaging. But the full manifestation of that will be in 2024, when we're going to be having the 30th anniversary of the International Year of the Family, which had begun in 1994. And of course, it's interesting to take note and to emphasize that although there is a World Day of the Family every year, which occurs on the 15th of 15th of May of every year, many people are not aware that such an international observance exists, International Day of the Family. And of course, International Year of the Family, which began in 1994, is celebrated every year as well, and especially marked every 10 years. There was one marked in 2014, another in is going to be coming up in 2024. And this is the third decade of that. And we hope that we can prepare our minds. All the several events we'll be having from now to that time will be kind of forerunners and preparatory stages where we'll be seeing a lot of the impacts that technology is having on the family currently around the world, and also bringing experts in family research in different dimensions to show what's going on in terms of research evidence and hard evidence on the ground from several perspectives and diverse scenarios that are having impact on the family. And that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me hand over back to the moderator to proceed with the other aspects of this day's event. And let me project the speaker's profile be read out in a moment.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much. That was so short. Yes, a quick reminder. I want to a minute, please. Yeah. A quick reminder, this event is brought to us by the World Family Forum, beg your pardon. and it is partnered by Together People International, Ants Plants, Next Level Educational Foundation International, the Organization of African Academic Doctors, OAAD, and Wasomi Charity Foundation. Yes, these are our partners, and I believe there are representatives here as well. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome to the last day of the World Family Forum. Today we have in our midst our professor, our guest speaker. He is going to touch on the family dilemmas. He's in the person of Professor B.M. Mba, PhD LLB. He's the dean. He's the dean, the Faculty of Arts at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka or in Shuka. In Nsukka, I hope I got the name right. At the University of Nigeria, and an accomplished academic, a legal luminary, and widely experienced educator. He has authored over 20 books as first author, over 50 research articles with over 30 as first author, contributed over 20 books chapters, translated over 10 works, made presentations in over 50 conferences around the world, and supervised 35 PhD students. Professor Mba belongs to diverse professional bodies related to his field of linguistics and Nigerian languages, and has served in many capacities at the University of Nigeria, such as head of department, deputy dean of the graduate school, and myriads of important committees that have contributed immensely to the development of the University of Nigeria. So tonight, he is going to take us through the dilemmas that we face as family. What are some of them? And for the next 20 to 30 minutes, he's going to take us through that. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Professor Mba to take the floor. Prof, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Gordon, Udi, and everyone over there. I thank God for today, and I thank you for, thinking out how to tackle family development, especially with reference to African families, with particular reference to those who are in the diaspora. So I'm pleased to be engaged in the program, and I think we have a common purpose, that is to ensure that we are constantly linked to our roots, because for the African, roots appear to be everything. So let me start by, telling us about 3 short stories about how families in Africa feel about their children who have traveled and find it difficult either returning or return once just in a while. I have a relation who was working with Nigerian Telecommunications Commission, who left for the US in 1983. It was about the very first of his family members that traveled overseas. And then up to today, as I'm speaking with you, he has never come back. The mother died about 2 months ago. Nobody heard about him. The kindred missed him, couldn't get at him. And then he also was expected to be at the mother's funeral, but he was nowhere to be found. Secondly, I also have another relation who, through American visa lottery, traveled to the US in 2023. And he never returned. He traveled, he had about 3 kids when he was going. And then he never returned until 2009 when the father died. Now, he came alone. He didn't come with the wife. He also didn't come with the kids. Ironically, the father was one of the wealthiest in his family and in his village. After the father's burial, the siblings seized his visa because they felt he was doing poorly in the US. Incidentally, he was a medical doctor with 2 hospitals here and was running his residency at the time he left. After the father's funeral, the mother died in 2018. After the death of the mother, the funeral was fixed, he was consulted, and at the funeral, he never returned. The entire family was not finding it easy because he was an only son. And being an African, I think all of us appreciate what goes on in the minds of the family members. As I'm making this presentation, he has not returned since 2009. Thirdly, we have colleagues here who married white ladies, some Britons, some Americans, and we were teaching in the University of Nigeria and Nsukka until they retired. When they retired, the family left for the US. And then those from the UK also left. Up till now, none of them has come back. And there are about 3 common things about those who are leaving Africa for the other continents. 1, at the point of inception, at the point of their leaving, there is always the hesitation by family members letting them go, except in situations where they are convinced that they will eventually return. But unfortunately, these initial assurances by those emigrating hardly come to fruition. Secondly, when most Africans who are allowed to travel on the assurances that they will return, after some time, after some stay in foreign land, will be uncertain whether they will come back or not. And this is the second phase of the mental orientation of those traveling. Thirdly, after some years of either not returning or not being sure to return, we find out that most of our brothers and sisters overseas find it extremely difficult to return. And you could imagine what goes on in the minds of the family members. And that is where the topic becomes very apt. And then we're talking about dilemmas. Now, when an African family, close-knit, closely bonded, loses a child, whether in the diaspora or through death, to find out that the family is shattered. And there is always this lingering wish that they have their child back, because there are philosophies that surround the African personality. And that is exactly what want to discuss on this issue. When I was discussing with Odi on this particular topic, and especially on the family dilemma, we didn't find it funny that our young men and women who are immigrating are finding it difficult to come back. And funnily too, it is not that they're doing any better overseas. So the question that one may wish to ask is, why is it necessary that we discuss this topic? It is absolutely necessary because throughout the world, as I have said before, roots is everything. People relate with you, and people relate to you according to many a time where you are coming from, your nationality, your color, your language. So it is absolutely necessary that families get bonded and don't lose their children either through immigration or through tourism or by whatever means outside of their home. Now, whether we like it or not, there is this theory of otherness. Otherness means a categorization, a labeling of individuals based on certain solidarity factors, either by gender, by nationality, by professional occupation, by institutional affiliation, or by whatever means you may have to, classify. And it results in the phenomenon of I against we and against the others. So we find out that the theory of otherness classifies individuals on the basis of so many factors, just as I've said, about where they are coming from, what they do, their agenda, and all that and all that. So, and with particular reference to the world order, you find out that Africans have unfortunately found themselves stigmatized, and in world conversation, they are seen as second-class citizens. And this is the reason why it becomes pertinent that Africans should look inwards on how to launder their identity, how to reunite with their families, and how to keep the ties going rather than losing their children, losing their future, losing their economy, losing even educational orientation, and then losing some philosophy that gives them that sense of direction and sense of well-being. So in the end, what does an African tell you about life and ontology generally? After the birth and the rites of passage, the African would want to be reunited with the family, whether living or dead. And this is why it is extremely painful when the African family looks at the future and discovers that they are losing out and they are being decapitated from their roots. And this is exactly why this topic is pertinent, and also giving the audience why it is necessary, so that those of you who are over there don't get lost, because it pains the African mind that as much as we are blessed, even more blessed than the other continents, we find out that we are losing our identity, losing our well-being, losing our children, and also destroying our future. So And whether we call it travel, or whether we call it immigration, or whatever name we may call it, we know that there are positives, and we also know that there are negatives that are attached to these travels. For instance, as Gordon was doing the introduction, she did mention looking for greener pastures. I think that is maybe an umbrella term or a universal term that one may, give reasons why people travel. You may travel for purposes of education, to get a further education. You may travel for purpose of tourism, whether it is health, medical tourism, or for entertainment, or for whatever. We must also travel for better economic well-being. But on the other hand, it is also possible for people to travel on the basis of failed soil, which gives rise to farming. People may also travel trying to run away from slave raiding and then empire builders that we often find across Africa. Then we also may find it necessary to travel because the kind of job we do in Africa does not pay commensurately. And then you discover that we have a wasted labor over here. But the irony of it all is that the same job that most of us, refuse to do in Africa is the same job that they will do overseas, and then also feel comfortable doing the same job that they have refused to do in Africa. And that is where it becomes difficult to define our philosophy actually. Now, I think I may put it to you directly, especially the participants. Why did you travel? Maybe during the conversation, we may go into that. Why did you actually travel at the point you wanted to travel? And on getting there, are you actually fulfilling that, either ambition or the zeal, or are you getting that was your target at the point of travel? These are issues that we need to, talk on. And if you are not achieving what you have set out to achieve, why is it that most of us over there are not willing to return? So these are basic issues that one finds, befuddling and then baffling that even in the worst scenario, the person who has traveled still persists in staying overseas. Well, I think the theory of cultural relativity teaches us that each culture has its own norms. And then these norms are the guiding principles that drive their life patterns. Some cultures may be insisting on dominance. Others may be talking about equality. Others may be talking about democracy, autonomy, independence, and all that and all that. Others will be talking about communalism. There are different types of economic and social organizations which drive the way things are organized across cultures. But the problem is, for the African, we know that we are very communal in our orientation. And in the West, they are very individualistic. So when an African that has been brought up in a communalist society travels in an individualist society, why is it that the African loses that sense of brotherhood, the sense of the community, which you will not find where you are staying? Is it that the traveled African is running away from responsibility, or what? So these are issues that we also, in the course of the discussion, we have to look into, because it has become necessary in the current world order, that we have to look back at where we're coming from. And in any case, where you are coming from is necessary wherever you may be. I'm aware that at the different, most Blacks, the few times I have traveled, you find out that a Black man will do the job of 3 white men to get the pay of the just single white man. And why is that so? Especially when we are very blessed. Now, people complain about so many things about, talk about the problem we have in leadership in Africa. But does running away solve the problem? That is the question we also have to ask. Is it not possible that all of us, we have to come together and determine our fate ourselves, so that we get the order of government the way we want it to be? It is absolutely necessary that emigrating will not solve the African problem. So now, if we may look at another aspect of the African dilemma, this time it may be more individualistic than it is communal, and that is the problem of gapping, what one may call gapping. And what do I mean by gapping? Gapping is that wish, especially on inception at the time you are traveling, which you have not achieved. Assuming now you have set out to go and make money and come back, help your relations, and then build your community. But you get there, as is almost always the case, you find out that it is not what you thought at the point of deception that you now encounter when you get overseas. Then you have a gap within you. You have a sore that refuses to heal. How do you go about that? For instance, you are very much aware that some African families overseas refuse to come back, not necessarily because they are doing well, but for the fear of what they will face when they return. Sometimes you find out that your age mates that you left behind, that you might have been very far better than at the point of living, have achieved quite a lot of things that you can hardly dream of. And then you return home, you find out that you are lagging behind. Rather than face reality, you run back, then pretend that all is well, and then you refuse to return. I think we're all aware of the story, the single story that Chimamanda Adichie always tells, against that of Chinua Achebe, the balance of stories. I think we need to balance the stories of our lives, because all that glitters, as they say, is not gold. The idea that we have to emigrate and stay put, refuse to return, is anti-African, because eventually the African worldview expects you to retire to where you're coming from. And that is the ancestral or fraternal bond. So one would wish that those of us overseas, especially those who have families, would not, because children, as we say, are like tendril, the yam tendril. they grow according to the way you twist them. If you make them believe that African is a place that they cannot go to or they cannot live in, they grow up believing that and they will never return. If you make your wife believe that it will be difficult for the family to survive when you come back to Africa, it will be your wife will believe you and will insist on staying back. Then you yourself, if you want to believe that it is better to stay there, never to come back, and then die there, get buried, then I think that is your choice. But these are against the African ontology and the philosophy of life. So things are not easy anyway, because many times we talk about the problems of Africa. We talk about the criminality, we talk about bad leadership, we talk about kidnapping, we talk about banditry, we talk about famine and all whatnot, as if to say that these things don't exist anywhere. I think there is nowhere on planet Earth that we don't have crises once in a while, we don't have banditry, we don't have gun running, and we don't have all manner of criminality. But one thing that adds to the problem of Africa, which exists overseas, is racism. Whether you like it or not, unless you have killed your sensitivity, you will always see racism around you. And you cannot wish it away because it is founded on the philosophy of otherness, you against the other. So I think those of you especially, I'm happy about the organization of the African academic doctors. These are eggheads that one expects, to come back and develop Africa, because we need manpower, we need good governance, we need a bright future, we need hope, and staying overseas, I don't think is the solution to the problem. Now, I think we have South Africans amongst you. The theory of Ubuntu, I am because we are. We discovered that that is what is driving Africa. But the opposite, individualism, self-assertiveness is what drives the West. And that is why when you demand some feedback on the African philosophy of life, the African philosophy of life suppresses individual achievement and gives you positive feedback on communal achievement, how you are impacted on your society, how you are building, why you are influencing others, and all that and all that. On the other hand, the West, under the capitalist economy they are running, will insist on individual achievement. I think it is on that note that most people that travel overseas would want to achieve personally without regard to their roots. Granted that many Africans over there repatriate part of what they earn to their African families, but is that enough? That is the issue. Because when a parent does not see the child, you may be talking on phone, you may be video conferencing, but is that as good as a physical conversation, physical discussion, empathizing, seeing relations, which is what the African philosophy of life is all about. One would maybe, before I round off, I'll talk about what the African feels about retirement and then eventual translation from this life into the other. Now, how does the African belief in retirement, how does it affect you? Now, is it possible for an African, after attaining some age brackets, maybe 70, 80, then you ask your mother to go to an old people's home? Is it possible? But that is what takes place in the world. So when you are retiring, when you have built your community, when you have raised your children, when you have toiled throughout life, and you are now going down on the basis of age, is it not an abomination for one to take the same parent of his or hers to an old people's home? I think these are things, you know, that the African takes very seriously. And that is why in our own side, Igbo land, or even in Nigeria generally, old people's homes don't thrive, because you want to give back to your parent what he has invested in you. So, and at that level, you are retiring. With whom are you retiring? If you are in an old people's home, maybe once in 6 months, once in 3 months, your children will visit you, they will depart. Now, that new community, how are you adjusting? How are you coping? So these are questions that the African mind would ask, and then would not even want to answer, because they are rhetorical questions, because you have to give back to the community what you have to invest in the person that has given a lot of his life to the community. So, and then the next thing that we, at the point of retirement, how do we adjust? Because the problem of the West at old age is, how do you adjust? Do you have any community? And at the point that you are translating to death, with whom? So how many families in Africa have cemeteries, public cemeteries? I think the African mind would want every soul to reunite with his family at the point of death. And that's why I started with the phrase that roots are everything for the African. So, and the dilemma that we are having currently is the dilemma of those who have traveled with their children. How are you relating your Africanness, your roots? How are you relating these to your children? Because they will never return. No matter how you wish, they will not return, because they have not grown up in an African setting. They don't know about our philosophy of life. They don't know about economic, political, socio-economic organization, and they hardly visit Africa. And the level of propaganda in the West makes it very difficult, especially even those of you who are young here, you believe that once you come home, you'll be kidnapped. Once you visit home, you'll be killed. Once you visit home, something very odd will happen. But the issue is, when you come to Africa, are there no people there? Are there no traffic gridlocks everywhere in Africa? Why is it that once you come, you will become a target? These are things that we have to ask ourselves. And the African mind believes that having reared you, having trained you, and you maybe have the opportunity of traveling, that you should also keep up with the link. You should remember your yesterday. You should remember your past. You should remember your age mates. You should remember your parents. You should remember your community. These are things that you may not likely, find out in the Western world. And it now becomes very imperative that for those of you who are there, let us assume that you are in the same grade of job with another person that is here. Maybe you are a teacher, another person is a teacher here, earning the same salary. You find out that by the time you return, because you want to return with millions, but the person here who is earning in trickles will be using it to achieve a lot. You have a family house, he will train his kids despite all odds. But those of you who are over there, very few make it. And it is because of the fear of competition that discourages many from coming back. So it becomes worrisome that even after, self-assessment, that we do not have the courage to take the bull by the horn, to come back. And then I think if you want to traveling around the world, I don't think is a very difficult thing. Once you have the personality, once you are not a criminal, once you have the quality of humanity that the world needs to get a visa, and you have the resources, you could be traveling whenever you need. So there's no gainsaying the fact that the African family, especially the African family overseas, is finding things very difficult, because the African family now is like a man, a small house with a small window. Those who are outside are struggling to come in, and those who are inside are struggling to go out. Many young men here in the University of Nigeria here are itching to travel out and possibly never to return. But also many young men overseas who are African are struggling to come back, but are also finding it difficult to return. It's a very big problem. It is a dilemma that requires courage in addition to prayers. And then it also requires one to mobilize others who may find it difficult to be thinking about returning. I have classified the Africans in the diaspora into three. The first class of the African in diaspora are those who have settled for the worst. They know that they're in a terrible condition. They know that they're not doing well, but cannot return. The second class are those who are confusable. They are hardly sure of what they are doing. They are not sure whether they are going to come back or whether they are going to remain behind. So, and thirdly, is that class of Africans in the diaspora who are sure-footed. They know why they have traveled. They know they have a mission, and they will achieve their mission and then either repatriate or return home and reunite with their families. So, in a nutshell, I want to thank you again for this invitation. I'm privileged to have these few minutes with you. And we all have to admit the African family is in a very serious dilemma, but it has to do with guts. It has to do with courage. It has to do with vision. And it has to do with what we want to do with ourselves in the future and our children. I think with focus, we can all come together and make Africa what we want Africa to be. Thank you very much for having me and for inviting me for this conversation.
Wow. Thank you so much, Professor Imba. That was brief, but very insightful. Family, we have heard the professor himself about the dilemmas of what the family faces when we decide to travel, the family dilemma. Yes, so let me check in that we are going to the questions and answers segment. If you have any question, you can choose to type it in the chat box or raise up your hand and I'll give you the platform to ask your questions. A quick reminder again that this program is proudly brought to us by World Family Forum in partnership with Together People International, Ants Plant, Next Level Educational Foundation International, the Organization of African Academic Doctors, that is OAAD, and Wasomi Charity Foundation. So family, we are a family now. Let's keep our questions coming. We heard the professor himself. He touched on so many things, people traveling, having the mind of not returning because of the harsh situation back home, some too. And I was asking myself, what will cause a person to travel from his home country to go and naturalize, even to naturalize in another person's country? What exactly will push an African to do that? And these are some of the dilemmas. We are going to discuss that. Please keep your questions coming. Let me check if we have any question on the chat box. Yes, I have one from Edmond. He says, how do we reconcile this philosophy of staying to develop with the reality of Africa we have today? That is a product of living because of unbecoming environments in a place once considered home. How do we reconcile this philosophy of staying to develop with the reality of Africa we have today? Yeah. Prof.
Okay.
Professor Edmond, if you don't mind, if you want to talk or ask your question further, I think you can also do better.
Yeah.
Professor
You
Edmond
can, if you want to talk.
is one of our people. He's in the UK. Yeah, Professor Edmond, please, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been listening and I was just looking at the reality. Especially if you look at Southern Africa today, the way it is, right? You will find how it's structured. There are only 2 communities who are the actual original members of that community, of that area. The rest of Africa, if you look from Zimbabwe, in fact, all of Zimbabwe, there were migrants from different parts of Africa. The reason of migration was maybe changing climate, right? And actually in some adversities from local people, and people were migrating. So that is how Africa is structured today. And now the forms of adversity are the ones that have changed only, right? And that is one of the primary push factors. That is the reason people are leaving, because you realize that, you know what, the farm that I have, it's a rock, right? I can't keep on farming on this rock. I have to find better places for farming, because farming is the skill that I have, right? So that is why I'm moving. So I'm just kind of curious, so how do we reconcile that with the reality? Because when we are saying migration is not African, but Africa is founded on migration. It's what made Africa the way it is today. The languages that we have, we can point them to migration. So we can say migration is actually part of African DNA, right? So how can we use African philosophy to say that we need to stay to develop when it is the nature of the African community to move around? Thank you.
Professor Edmond. Yes, Professor, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I completely agree that many African countries, traditional African countries, were founded on migration. If we may take the Igbo of Eastern Nigeria, for instance, we have so many, hypotheses on our origin. talk about the Oriental hypothesis. Some say we are Hebrews, others say we originated from where we are. Others talk about the Atam kingdom, conquest and all that. But I think in a diverse society like Africa or in any country, that is what will even make us achieve. Because let's take the American system, for instance. You know that America was also founded on diversity. Almost every continent is found in the US. And that would have, informed a political system that would, weld all the people together and have a vision. I think we also know that the Red Indians that originally inhabited America were almost exterminated. And I think migration is not the problem, but the problem is undue competition, empire building of a section of each of the countries in Africa. Because Westernization also came to complicate it in the sense that many incongruous and unrelated cultures were put together. And these cultures, rather than settle and accommodate one another, decided to be competing, trying to, ensure that they dominate others. And that is part of the problem that leads to either gangsterism, criminality, and all forms of social, vices that we have in Africa. I don't believe that it is because of migration that we are the way we are. It has to do with bad leadership, because Nigeria, for instance, has over 250 ethnic groups, but we were living happily. We were living as one until maybe a few years back, when one ethnic group, felt that it was their birthright to rule over others. And then when others said no, that it has to be in turns, then there, arose a conflict that has continuously degenerated. And the Nigeria political system today is so toxic that many people are not finding it funny either joining or even trying to stop either of the parties. I think this is also, it extends to all parts of Africa, especially those that were formed on the basis of diversity. I think if you have an altruistic leader, a visionary leader that can come together, because I don't think there is a problem with most of the constitutions of African countries. The problem has to do with implementation. If we follow our constitution squarely, give each person his rights and accords the same person his privileges, I think the problem of Africa will have 90% solved. I think that's what I believe. I agree that migration is in the DNA of Africa, but migration is not in itself a problem, but the problem lies with the migrants. Thank you very much. And then maybe in addition to that, do we then say that migrating from Africa to other worlds will solve the problem? Because we need to, sit back and think how to solve the problem. When a continent loses its youngsters, its brains, the eggheads of society because of internal problems, I think the society or the country will be degenerating rather than making progress. I believe that we need to have a conducive political atmosphere that will welcome our young men and women overseas to develop Africa and get the kind of Africa that everybody will be proud of.
Thank you so much, Prof. I believe, Prof. Edmond, your question has been answered. Yes, I have another question here from Donatien. I believe I pronounced that name well. He says there are many students who are blocked in Africa. What can they do to come back to China and finish their studies? The Chinese government is not clear on this matter. Can we say that China and Africa are partners in all fields?
Well, I think that's part of the problem we are talking about, part of the family dilemma we are talking about. But I'm aware, I think some colleagues of ours that returned shortly before COVID, that got locked down in Nigeria here, have written their exams online. I'm very much aware of that. And then Nigeria has made arrangements to readmit students that were displaced in Ukraine because of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. I think each country is trying to find the best way to get the students that have been displaced accommodated. I think in Nigeria, we don't have that problem. We are having exams online, even in Nigeria here, even in University of Nigeria and Nsukka, we're having exams online, we're having lectures online, and the different countries are negotiating with China, with Ukraine, with troubled nations to ensure that their children are not shortchanged, their students. So I would have wanted the student to be specific about the country he's talking about, so that we can find out how that country is trying to tackle the problem. But as far as Nigeria is concerned, I'm aware my own child also is in China, and I don't think he's having that kind of problem. Nigeria has made arrangements to accommodate and solve the problem of Nigerians who are displaced either by corona or by conflicts overseas. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. Yes, I have. Please keep your questions coming. This is a family discussion. Don't withhold your questions. The question you ask might benefit someone out there. So kindly do well to put your question on the chat box. Yes. Prof, there's another question here for you. It says, if we hold the opinion that family lineages are important, should it get high-level attention from individuals, governments, intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations? Is it so important?
Well, I think it's very important, and it is key to, in fact, family is everything. Before you become anything in society, you must have come from one family or the other. And then there are, like in Nigeria here, we have non-governmental organizations, Kwangos, and then we also have governmental organizations, institutions that are responsible for, suiting troubled minds in families, and also there are what we call the two republics in social political organizations. Two republics in the sense that one of the republics is about the family and the culture. Then the other republic has to do with the secular government, westernized government formation in Africa. And what is holding Africa together is the cultural family system, not necessarily the westernized political system that we are running. Because you discover that many a time what you do in either the church or your office, you will not do in your home. And that is part of the problem. If you attend the meeting of your kindred, family meeting, there are certain things you won't do. But when you come outside your family setting. You start doing it because maybe the government, nobody will disturb you, or maybe you have now acquired some pedigree that even the government will not even talk to you. I think it is the conflict between the two republics that forms part of the problem that we're having in our society. And then when we are talking about family unity and family reunion in troubled homes, there are, there are ways, there are cultural ways, patterns that different families adopt in solving family problems. And then the non-governmental organizations, especially when we have the issue of, let's say, the girl child problem that appears to be rampant in Africa. There are non-governmental organizations that ensure that the girl child is not maltreated, and then also ensures that basic amenities that are due to the girl child are accorded her. So it is a societal problem, but different cultures have different ways of tackling, troubled homes, displaced children, displaced families, and all that. Let's say, use Eastern Nigeria, for instance, as an example. In the north, in northern Nigeria, internally displaced persons in times of crisis, are popular. You have internally displaced people centers. But in the West or in the East, you find out that if you establish a center for internally displaced persons, you won't see anybody there, because different families, are trying to accommodate their family members who are in trouble. So different cultures have different ways of tackling certain, social problems. And then I don't think there's a universal principle, that can, help us to solve different family problems that you may find across cultures.
Thank you so much. There is a follow-up question from Donatien. Okay, thank you, Kay. Your question is quite lengthy. I will come to that later. Let me come out with Donatien's follow-up question. He says, for example, the one who just spoke about China's issue, student not being returning back. Yeah, he said, for example, in Burundi, there are cases of students blocked. There are cases of students who are blocked and who are blocked there since February 2020. So what can they do to go back to China to finish their studies? I think, as Prof said, the online courses are there. And he said many of them are doing experimental research, especially those who are into research programs. They are just doing experimental research. They cannot work online. In such cases, what should they do? And, as they work online, do these experimental courses, in the long run, they will get back to the job market, and probably they wouldn't be able to bring out the output they are supposed to bring out because of what they have gained out there. So in such cases, what do we do?
Well, and a critical issue here is the field work they are doing, the experimental research they are doing. Where is the field work located? Are they studying African systems? I think if that is the case, they get their data in Africa. One believes that they can liaise by online with their supervisors. And then, like myself, hardly do I, meet my students, especially those who are very far physically. I do everything online with them. and then they get going. When it comes to national policies, it becomes very difficult. If China says you are in China, if you leave, you are not returning. China is an independent, a sovereign nation that determines, how it runs its own government. So the best thing that a child or a student who is carrying out an experimental research can do is to work online with the supervisor. I think that's the best thing because even if you're in China, you are going to work with your supervisor, not with China as a country. You are working with people, and you have to work closely with your supervisor. The supervisor will appreciate your problem, and then tell you how best to tackle the problem. I don't think it's a major problem with the online facilities we have, except maybe the tools and the reagents that the students may need are not in Burundi. If the student can access the materials for the research either in Burundi or do the importation of the materials, then I think the problem is almost solved. So I think being in China is not the problem. It is doing the work that we have set out to do.
Prof, thank you so much. I hope Donatien, your follow-up question has been solved. Yes, there is a lengthy question here from K, Sister K. She says, Prof's presentation puts most part of the blame, at least 80%, on the diaspora not wanting to come back home, putting little concern on one. Why did Africans even decided to leave their homeland? The questions are, I think, 2 or 3. So I'll ask them one by one. Why did Africans even decided to leave their homeland in the first place? What exactly will push an African? Because for me, since I came here and I got interacted with some Chinese who could speak English, you ask them, would you like to travel to Africa? No, what am I going to do there? I'm self-sufficient here. So why would an African also leave his or her homeland to travel and to even think of naturalizing? What will compel an individual to do such a thing?
Well, I think it's a question that is neither here nor there. During the course of the conversation, I did mention that there are many reasons that one may decide to travel. And then we're in a globalized world, and one is free to choose, what he does with his life. Because what we say that different strokes for different folks. So there are many reasons one may decide to leave Africa for just adventure. One may decide to leave Africa to acquire further education. One may decide to leave Africa for medical tourism. One may leave Africa to maybe for economic well-being. One may also decide to leave Africa to ensure that he gets that which he desires for himself, maybe in terms of health, in terms of sports, because I think sports pays better overseas. So there are very many reasons why people may decide to leave Africa, and it's not like it's only Africans that go to other continents. There are many other nationals in Africa. If you go to Ethiopia, for instance, you find out that there are many Americans, there are many Britons there. If you go to South Africa, if you come to UNN here, almost we have many Ukrainians, we have many Russians here teaching foreign languages. If you go to Lagos, you find many of them. So it's not like it's just Africa. We are talking about our own. How do we contain that which we have? How do we ensure that in the future, Africa doesn't lose out? So it's not like it's only Africans that go to other continents. In Africa, there are so many other, citizens of other continents that are living in Africa. So I think every African has the rights to stay wherever he wants to stay in a globalized world.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Yes, I think this is okay. This is not a question, but I think she was making an addition to what you said, but there was a question also. I will take it from here. Don't you think that prior to pushing for African diaspora to come back home, we must firstly solve the issue of what is waiting for those people back home, in order for them to even to be attracted by the idea of going back to their homeland? Don't you think that once we solve this issue, many might actually be interested in the idea of coming back home with their families? Because as much as the year have passed, each time African diaspora go back home to visit families, they do not seem to notice much positive changes in our African government's ways of governance. For example, the transportation in cities have gotten worse. Public hospitals are dilapidated, and other stuff. So I think she's of the opinion that it will be better if we put all these facilities in check. Everything is working as we are experiencing in the diaspora, and that will attract families to come back home and wouldn't feel like traveling back to the diaspora. And she also further says that public services, everything is getting worse. Corruption is going on rampantly. Investing back home is like a death trap with enormous amount of taxes to pay. That does not seem to be something attracting enough to make citizens come back to invest home. So what can we do to solve this dilemma? This is a question.
Well, I think in the course of the conversation, we did highlight the fact that we are one, and we should have a common destiny, and there is no point passing the buck. If you are saying that those in Africa have to fix the facilities before you return, then you are not prepared to return, because we expect you to return to give your own impact, to make your own impact to society. We are talking about the traffic gridlock and all that, talking about hospitals. If you're a medical doctor and you're in the diaspora, what prevents you from coming, establishing a hospital and then putting it to the standard that you expect it to be? Because you also find out that, let me give you a typical example. In Nigeria here, if the government wants to increase school fees, the students will go on rampage. But that same student that goes on rampage will pay 100 times what you would have paid in Nigeria overseas. And that is exactly why we don't want to pay for the services rendered. You may come here, you find somebody who is using light. You use light for 2-3 months, he will not pay the electricity bill. When maybe the electricity personnel come, either he will to disconnect the lights, either he will give bribe and all that, and then there won't be any light. But over there, you cannot jump your responsibility in terms of provision of public facilities. If you do it, you go to jail. So here in Nigeria, in my own university here, the student hostel, the accommodation is 30,000 naira. The school authority wanted to increase it to 50. 50,000 naira, but the students refused. But the same student that refused 50,000 naira will go and pay 250,000 to, hire a lodge, to rent a lodge and stay in the lodge, but would not want to do the same in the institution that he's in. I'm sure that those of you who are there, especially in China, you know the amount of money you are paying as school fees. Convert it to your own local currencies, and then get the equivalence of what the students in Africa are paying. You find out that part of the problem is that the African is not willing to pay for the services that is being given. And that is what I mean by the two republics. You can't, assuming you are in a family, you are amongst your kindred, and they have said, and they have levied everybody maybe $1. You cannot say you are not going to pay. No, but once it is in the public, regular, secular public service, people will be dodging. Pay tax, nobody will pay. So these are part of the problem that we are having. It's not that we don't know what to do, but because of the conflicting cultural diversities that Africans have found themselves, if it is somebody who is from another ethnic group that is ruling, the other ones will be protesting, and that is part of the problem. So it is not that we don't know what to do, and then you wouldn't want to pass the buck, saying that people have to fix it before you come back. Why don't you come back and then help to fix the facilities that's to the level that you want? So I think that is the perspective I'm coming from. It is our common heritage. It is our common wealth. And then we also have to come back to fix it, because eventually, at old age, you find out that it is absolutely necessary that you return. Because many of you are young, you are ebullient, you're energetic. Things are going well until now. When you now start approaching 70, 80, you wish that you return home, no matter how it is. East or west, home is the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. I would like to ask a question regarding what you just said, that it is also prudent for the student to also come back to adapt to the existing thing that is there back home. I've had this encounter where the term is social bully, social bully. I've had this encounter with a friend where he came from the diaspora with his acquired knowledge. He wanted to apply that skill he has acquired overseas at his workplace. And the attitude of the people really discouraged him. What is it? Are you the saint to come and change things around here? Are you new in this country? This is how we've been running our business, and this is how we do it. In my language, we call it Eba Hadaben. When did you arrive? That kind of thing. Social bully. How do we overcome such a thing? Because we need those knowledge to also help our society to develop, to look good, for all of us to live well. But here is the case: you are faced with this kind of challenge. When did you arrive? Are you the only person who have traveled, and all kind of things? So such a social bully, how do we work at it to overcome it?
Well,
Prof, please, can you hear me?
Thank you for that. If you are a professional, yes.
Okay.
Okay. If actually you are a professional, that's the scenario you have just painted can only happen in government establishments. But if you are a professional, you establish your own institution or your own agency or your own office and run it professionally. Let me give you a typical example. There is a hospital we call St. Nicholas in Lagos. It's a specialist hospital, a private hospital, and you get there, you get the service, but you pay for the service. In Enugu State here, we have the Memphis Hospital, You have the Niger Foundation Hospital. These are people that came from overseas, established hospitals, equipped the hospitals. If you go there, if you can afford it, you go there, you get the service that you are asking for. So, and then what you have just, what you have just indicated is still refers to what I call the two republics. We cannot run away from the phenomenon of the two republics. What happens in the public sphere is quite different from what happens in your private life. So the only way you can, do that is when you are coming back from overseas with your wealth of knowledge, and then again you want to depend on the government. That is where the problem comes, and that's where the scenario. When did you arrive? Are you a saint? Why do you want to teach us? When were you born? So it happens everywhere. But then if for instance you are independent, you have your own business to run, you run it the way you like, and the people will come. People who cherish good things will come. So that is how it is here in Nigeria. We know all the most costly facilities that we have, but to be prepared to pay for them. If you're not prepared for, if you just want to do the secular orthodox things, then you go to public service and then you get insulted the way you never expected it. And it shouldn't discourage you. It shouldn't discourage you because you are coming to help society. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
I hope you hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes, before I get back to the chat room, I'll call on Sister K. Her hands have been up for quite a long time. Sister K, please make your submission.
Okay, so can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for your presentation. I feel a little bit like Sister Ruth, she divided my question. Actually, it was like she was supposed to read the whole paragraph because I was kind of going through a certain logic, and my main focus was on if we do not focus first on why people left, then it will be very difficult for us to answer the question, why are they not coming back? I strongly believe that the answer for this first question, why did people left, is very it's crucial into answering or even analyzing the answer of the second question. Because when I mentioned in my question or in my logic that most Africans, they don't feel like coming back home, it's not because in the past African diaspora did not come back home. We have so many cases of people who went back home, who were lucky enough to go abroad and then lucky enough to find a good job and then save a certain amount of, or a considerable amount of money and decided to go back home to invest. But in many cases, I will not say most cases, because of course there are people who come back home and are able to invest and then lead a good life back home. But many of them had to find them coming back again abroad, although they had already put in their mind that with the amount of money that I have been able to save here, I am sure that I can do something back home. But they get back home and then find themselves facing this reality. Like, even if they have money, they just realize that with the time passing, their money are just going out, like getting out. Nothing is getting back in because of all the things that I've mentioned earlier. But there is also what Sister Ruth mentioned about the bullying. And I believe that this is also a very important aspect, because although Professor mentioned that this is mostly for African diaspora who come back home with the idea of maybe just looking for a job again in the government or even in the private sector. But the thing is that most of us going back home, we are just going back home to look for opportunities to apply those advanced theory that we have learned here. And we are not going to get back home and then start our company right away. We don't have enough money. This I am going on the basis that on, let's say on 100 African who go abroad, at least 60 of them are going for study. They are not going there to find a job. They are going there for study first. Most of the time is while studying that they have some opportunities, and then at the end they might be able to find a good job. But majority of them are students, and they are going there to study and to learn new ways of thinking, new ways of solving problems, new ways of. And then when they get back home with this technology, what they face is exactly what Mrs. Ruth, Sister Ruth was mentioning. People back home making you feel like as if you are feeling superior. What do you want to tell us? That you went to into white people's society, and now you came back and you want to make us think that that's not going to work. And if most of them I faced with this type of how can I call it, of reaction from our friends, from our family back home, then I think that we will be like staying in the same circle, because those people will always find a way to go back abroad. That's what they will do. They will find a way to get back abroad. So I think I really believe that the issue into solving the question, why are Africans not going back home, is in solving the first question of why are so many Africans leaving the homeland. So that's I don't know if I try to make myself a little bit more.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Okay.
I got you. I think it is clear enough if we start from why did they leave in the first instance. I did highlight that there are many reasons why people migrate across the world. First, for instance, the last time I went to Germany in shortly before COVID, 2020, I had friends there who were not willing to return home because the southern part of Cameroon was in turmoil. They were running away from persecution, running away from conflict. So if we relate that to the question you have asked, why did they leave? They are running away from a war-torn southern Cameroon. And we wouldn't expect them to be coming home. But we are talking about Africa as a people. Now, it mustn't be that if my country is war-torn, that I cannot go to Ghana, that I cannot go to South Africa, I cannot go to Kenya, so on and so forth. So when we're talking generically, you find out that we're talking about Africa as a generic term. You must not, if you are a Cameroonian, if you are a Nigerian, and your country is in a war-torn situation, one doesn't expect you to start coming back to where there is war. It's a natural instinct. And as I've told you before, in Nsukka here, there are many Ukrainians who are here. They're not going home because there's war in Ukraine. So it's not just about Africa. There are certain basic universal, principles that one would adopt to safeguard his or her own life. So, but if, for instance, just as you rightly pointed out, that if there are 100 Africans overseas, that about 60 of them are there to read.
So organized.
And I've also mentioned that in University of Nigeria here, if you get a fellowship or scholarship overseas, you are given leave to go and use the opportunity. I'm sure that one of your organizers, Odi, is our colleague here in University of Nigeria and Nsukka. And he had a fellowship, a grant, a leave to use and do his studies. So he's there, he will come back eventually. So there are many reasons why we leave, but we are talking in general terms. If it is a war-torn situation, one doesn't, it's not part of, that's a different scenario altogether. But we're talking about when things are normal, and then you would expect that the person would actually come back after the spent or the expected time. So if you have gone to the US or to the UK or to China to do business, and there's no conflict in your area, then your children are not returning, your wife is not returning, then you are also not returning. I think these are situations we are talking about, and then we're not saying that other people in other continents are not in Africa, but they are going home. That is the situation. We had Indians here in University of Nigeria and Nsukka. Today, you can hardly, I think there's just 1 or 2 Indians in Nsukka now. But formerly there were many. There was a time in the 80s, every household had a Ghanaian. But today they are home. So you find out that at different times, different countries have different social, political problems. And that will determine the pattern of immigration or pattern of movement that you find across the country, and it is a continuous thing. The whole world is a fleeting world, and then you wouldn't debar anybody from moving. So I think the situation why are they leaving is a critical point, but we are looking at normal situations that normal human beings would, after traveling, go home. I think that is the angle I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mba. I think that once again I was misunderstood. When I say why are Africans going abroad, I'm not talking about the minority of them who are going because of war. There's war in their country, or maybe for medical reasons. These are minorities. I'm talking about the majority of them who are going there because they cannot find better solutions in their countries. So I'm focusing on them. I'm not actually, maybe I did not ask the question very well. Actually, the question why are they going is not because I want to know, okay, which category, the first reason it could be because of this, because of that, but we already know, I am going on the basis that we already know that 80% of those Africans are going there looking for greener pasture because things are not good back home. So when they finish their studies and then they find something there to make them want to come back home, we have to, I believe that we need to solve an issue first. They went outside because things were not good back home. hoping that they will find something better, or some not even better, just something that is, because a lot of Africans, they go abroad because they cannot even find a job. It's not even because they have found a job, but they think that no, it's not good enough. I want something better. Many people cannot find a job. They have a lot of diploma. For example, in my country, people with PhD, they are selling tomatoes on the street. So if we cannot solve this issue, then we will not attract them back home. We cannot just stand at them, stare them and say, why are you not coming back home? Then they will reply saying, why do you think I left home? So I hope that I'm just trying
Yes,
to make
I
myself
get
clear.
I get the perspective that you want us to, look at your analysis from. You find out that there is nowhere in the world where you have everything going on smoothly. Every country has its own problems. And then you find out that education is just an instrument that one acquires in order to adapt well in society. And then many a time we move without actually knowing what we are going to encounter overseas. Because even overseas, things are not easy either. It's not that you have a PhD that is the issue. It's not that you have a medical doctor certificate that is the issue. Because most countries, if you go there, you see face the same tests. If you do not, you measure up, you see you wouldn't have the same job. Like the person I was telling you about, I started with, who was a medical doctor. He had 2 hospitals here before he left, went to the US, took their medical exam, could not pass. And then you wouldn't expect the American Medical Commission to employ him because he could not measure up. No, but back here, he was doing well. I don't know what happened, but you find out that certificate in itself does not qualify one, because you must have to, you have to transfer that or convert it to something that is, serviceable, and something that you can say that this is the person's aptitude. So it's not just that one has a PhD selling tomatoes. Even if you give that person postdoctoral certificate, if you even give him a lectureship job, that person may not still be able to teach. So intelligence is one, and then it depends on how you want it to manifest. I don't think if you have a PhD and you know what you are doing, you can adapt anywhere. Because if you go to Canada, for instance, you find out adverts everywhere. You come to Canada, you have driving license, you do that. If you go to Canada, it is not what they tell you that that you may encounter. There's propaganda everywhere. There was a time they said the Canadian government established a settlement. They will give you 700 or 7,000 euros for you to come and settle there. By the time you get there, you find out that you are, doing slave labor. And over the years, you discover that they will exploit you. They will, at the time you think you'll be enjoying the services you have rendered, you just be dislodged and then sent back home. So there's no society that has everything, going for it. There are problems everywhere. And then the cardinal question that to ask, why did they leave home? If you cannot survive in your own country, I think you also have to struggle in other people's country to survive, because people will not clear for you to come and take what you want. You have to compete. The world is about competition. The world is about service. So I think that's what I have. It's not a question of you leave home, you go, you find things very rosy for you.
Wow. The world is about
competition. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
The world is about competition. You have to compete. You have to work hard. We need to work hard as we are still young. We need to forge ahead to get our way through in our own motherland. Uzuma Oze has made some submission here, and I would like to read them. If you have any question, you can continue to type or raise up your hand and I'll call you. I saw one hand up. Please don't go away. I'll call you very soon. Let me read some pile of messages here. Oze says that most African youths in the diaspora are sure-footed and doing well because the system works where they are. They continue to stay outside because the system in their home country is not as effective as in the countries where they are. And they do not see it changing soon. I love my home country, and I believe most African youths in the diaspora feel same. I had my first and second degrees in the biological sciences in Nigeria, and was able to go for another master's degree in mechanical engineering in the US. I doubt this is doable in Nigeria. What is the academic sector doing to support and encourage youths with various potentials to explore opportunities and contribute to the growth and development of Africa? Prof, this is a question.
Thank you very much. I think I'm happy that the person is from this part of the world, and then you'll find out that, well, he asked a straightforward question. In the Nigerian educational system, if you are moving across faculties, maybe you have done education and then you want to move to social sciences or to engineering or to whatever, you are required to do a diploma. So assuming he did some program in biological sciences and wanted to go to engineering, all he needed to do is to have a diploma in engineering. So I don't think it's not rocket science to know how you can move from one area of specialization to another. So, and again, we're talking about the youth doing well, being sure-footed. You also have to consider how many hours the person you are saying is sure-footed, the person you are saying is doing well, how many hours does he put in a day? In Africa here, the highest you can do, maybe you do an 8-hour job and you're expecting to be paid fully. But in the US, you may see somebody standing for 18 hours. We move from one job to another, from another job to another, and then the community is not even there. Nobody will even have time for you to start chatting like we do in Africa, live your life, attend parties, and then attend masses here and there, maybe religious organizations. You have to put in a lot in order for you to make it anywhere in the world. So it's not peculiar to, if you put the same energy you are putting in the US in an African setting, you are still going to be short-footed. So, but here, maybe you find, for instance, now we're on lockdown in the university, the teachers are on strike since February till now. And then nothing is happening. That cannot happen anywhere in a civilized society. So in many parts of Africa, you see teachers go on strike, civil servants go on strike, they do picketing from now till to whatever time you may think. And then you feel that it's better over there. I'm aware that I have had the experience. You may find somebody taking 3 jobs a day, every day, for the person to make it. So I have already said it, you compete to survive. Life is not fair to anybody. If you want to make it, you must sacrifice. You must put in a lot in order to survive in a competitive world that we have found ourselves in.
Thank you so much, Prof. Talking about sacrifices, once my grandmom told me, if you don't sacrifice for what you need or want today, what you need tomorrow will be used as sacrifice. So family, let's work hard. Let's sacrifice. A question, is there a question? A submission from Pasty or Pasty. He or she says, the Chinese students here pay a very low amount of fees. And so I don't think the amount we as international students pay here should be used to compare with the students back home. So as indigenes of Nigeria, of course, the school fees for a Nigerian should be way lesser, while an international student of Nigeria should be more. Okay, that is a submission. Then Chibike also shared a link to a presentation made at the International Center for Ethno-Religious Mediation. So family, you can copy the link and then watch in your comfort zone as well, and then get where we are going, what that link means. And he also asked, when compared to the Western approach, which is accusatory and punitive, compared to the African, which has a more reconciliatory approach. Okay. Any more questions? All right, another submission by Chibike.
Sorry, I think the title of the speech captures what it's about. The second sentence was just an addition.
Okay, thank you so much for that correction. Yeah, and he says, on the issue of bullying, those are signs of inferiority complex and a mediocre mind. Anybody who is self-confident or has a progressive mind will seek to partner with you based on the knowledge you bring to the table and not to compete with you. Thank you so much for that submission. Yeah, and then, yes, okay. I think that is all we have. Any more questions? If there are no questions, no hands up, then we can call it a night with Prof. If there are no questions.
Hello, can I say something?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So just to throw more light to the link I shared, because I listened to Prof talk about conflict resolution. You know, so I stumbled upon this video on YouTube sometime. It's the title is an appraisal of Igbo traditional method of conflict resolution. So it compared how the Igbo people, which is basically the same in Africa, based on our communal lifestyle, how our approach is more, reconciliatory and conciliatory compared to the Western, which is, how the English law is. It's accusatory and punitive. So, for example, when there is a conflict in a marriage, it might take, days and weeks, and eventually it is settled. But in the Western system, when there is any misunderstanding, you run to the court and get it dissolved. So it's a very rich presentation, which I think is almost the same, around Africa, having family meetings and, having elders and several other methods of managing conflict. So which we can all learn, from towards our African way of being in a family.
Okay, thank you, Brother Chibike, for that enlightenment. My producers just hinted me that no more question. I have just one last question. The person posted that earlier on from Gideon. I think it was, I nearly forfeited that question. He says, how can Africa have a win-win collaboration with China? What do African countries need to do to identify their win without losing their cultural values and integrity?
Okay, I think that's it's meant for me. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have international law that guides the duties and obligations of sovereign nations. But for the Africa to have a win-win situation with any other country, Africa must, first of all, be seen as independent, be seen as resourceful, and then be seen as a partner in the Committee of Nations and then in the world order. For instance, the problem that we have already highlighted with African countries is that what I keep on calling the two republics. Now, what happens in the secular government circle will not happen in any family setting. So that you may find maybe a conglomerate, an international company negotiating for business partnership in an African country, and then may just give some token as a either, I wouldn't call it bribe, as a facilitating the mechanism, and then the parties that will represent the African countries will ordinarily not bargain as they will ordinarily bargain. So I think self-worth is the cardinal point. Self-assertiveness is the cardinal point. Being patriotic and then making sure that we get value for what we produce. I think these are, Africa is well blessed with human and then material resources. But let me give you an example. Some like footballers. How many Africans, international footballers, are paid according to the scales that you find in them? Because maybe they don't have the opportunity that the white people have. They don't have leagues back home that pay well. They have to go for the best offer they have. Assuming you had resounding leagues that are well organized, that pay for the services that footballers render, then why should they not be paid commensurately in the Western world? So I think we need to be self-assertive. We need to appreciate what we have, and then we also need to love ourselves. We need to be patriotic and then nationalistic in view, so that we know we are representing the nation of which we are part. So I think when this is when we can take care of this, then we should be able to have a win-win situation. Because China, for instance, it has in the early 70s, early 80s, you find out that China and many countries of Africa were at the same level of economic development. But because we keep on running ourselves down, China is up there, competing favorably with the US. So I think the only thing we have to do is to make sure we work hard, we produce what we consume, and then we at least exploit the resources we have. Like those of you who are over there, young men, brilliant young men, assuming all of you are in Africa, you know, establishing enterprises. Why would any other continent, you know, take us for granted? So I think for we to have a win-win situation in Africa, we have to be self-sufficient to start with, and then we have to bargain nationalistically and patriotically so that we get what we deserve for our African continent.
Wow, thank you so much, Professor Boniface Imba. I believe we've had a fruitful discussion with him and all the questions. One thing I have learned from this discussion is that as African as we are, no matter where we find ourselves, our roots should be very important to us. We need to go back home. We need to settle down back home and build our nation, because no one is coming to Africa. No white man will come back to Africa to build it for us. We have to do it ourselves. Yes, we may say that our leaders in one way or the other have failed us. Should we also follow them to fail our generation? No, we have to set the pace. No matter how hard it is, no matter how bad our economies have become, we need to go back home with the acquired knowledge and skills we have attained. Start something on our own, employ people who are under us, people who are struggling to also make ends meet. employ them, because people back home, the youth back home really have skills and they just need someone to help them stand on their feet. And maybe you have that help. So please, as Africans as we are, when we travel, for me, I have my family back home. If I finish, I'm done. Straight back home, whether I have a job back home or not, I have to go back to take care of my family. And I believe when I get there, definitely I'm going to have something doing. We should be positive as Africans, as our prof have said, we should love ourselves. One thing that is tearing apart is love. We are not loving ourselves enough to sacrifice for one another. We should be patriotic. When you see something going on in your country which is so bad, you need to feel so bad that you wish you could have a change. You wish you could do a change. I mean, do something to change that situation. Don't just say, oh, this is Africa as usual. This is what you are also helping the situation to escalate. We have to bring a change to what is on the ground now. So whatever knowledge we are acquiring, let not stay in the diaspora forever, because it saddens my heart that colleagues will pass on and their corpse, even their corpse cannot be transported back home. That is very disheartening. Your parents will not see you again for the rest of their lives. It's very heartbroken. And you know, as African as we are, we share that family bond. No matter what, you have one aunt somewhere, one uncle somewhere who will help you do something. So let's not forget our roots. Let's be selfless and let's be genuine. Most of the times we find ourselves hurting our own selves, our own race. That is why these white and Chinese and the foreigners, I mean, the Westerners have taken advantage of, and you see them molesting Africans because we are not loving ourselves enough. Let's unite, Africa. Let's unite. As we have come here, let's put all bitterness aside. Let's put all the things that disunite us, let's put them aside, come together and rebuild our continent again. God has given us a very beautiful continent. The Western world cannot survive without Africa. We should know that. But we ourselves, what are we doing? We need to come together, build our continent, and then you will not see yourself traveling overseas for a longer time. You will travel and then you'll be yearning to come back home. So family, I believe we have had a great chat, conversation, discussion with Professor. I'll call on, thank you so much, Professor, for your time. Honestly, we do not take it for granted. We are most grateful for the time you spent with us. And everyone on the call here, you've done a great job by sticking and stay with us. Your questions really helped us a lot. And we have not taken your time for granted. We are sorry we have crossed the time, but we also appreciate your patience as well. I will call on Prof. OD. If he has something to say, he will say it, then we wrap it up and then we check out from here. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Mba, for the very beautiful engagement you brought to us today. It's been very, 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 very effective. The conversation has been rich and widespread. Inputs from various angles and people sharing their thoughts as they perceive the issue. Of course, definitely, we can't all have the same perspective on the issue, but the good thing is that we are talking about it and we are looking at the potential implications and impact of our actions and where this is likely going to lead. And the emphasis is always going to be on the people who are going to find it extremely useful are those who have the perspective of the African ontology, the Africanness of the African people. Those are the people that will find it extremely useful in that perspective. And we hope that we are able to continually engage and drive things forward. So taking it back to the moderator, please, towards to close. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation once again.
Thank you so much, Odi. We would like to take a group photo. If you're in a good place, kindly keep your camera open for some few seconds, and then we'll take a group photo. Today we are not many, so it's just one page, a quick one there, then we disappear from here. Yes, we check out. Please, Sister Uzuma, your smile is really infecting me. I want to smile too. Please open your camera. Yeah.
A smile is already like real life.
Yes, it's so contagious, you know. Please, a quick one so that we take a group photo. Is Prof with us or he just checked out?
I think he checked out.
Oh, okay.
But
That's
it doesn't seem like he planned to. He still intended hanging around, but it's like something knocked him off or something.
Oh, okay. Please, we are waiting for the rest of you. Musa, Sister K, Richard D. Yes, Clinton, Uzoma. Uzuma. Is it Uzioma or Uzuma? Ozi. Uzoma. Thank you so much for that correction. Chibike, we are waiting for you. I want to see your handsome face. And then Kina. Is that all? We are waiting for the rest. 1, 2. Okay, beautiful. Oh, Yusuf is here. Okay, no problem. No problem. Emmanuel, he says he's outside. No problem. How about Pesty? Pesty, Ola, and Rich D. Should we wait for you or we should go ahead without you? Lalitu is also here. Yes. All right.
Auntie Jifa.
Yes, Jifa is here. We are only seeing your
Yes,
forehead.
Uncle Lodi.
Yeah. Happy to see you.
All right. Over to you, Odi. You can take the shot now. Please, let's give a cheese smile. Cheese.
Yes, I've taken 2, and I can just take one more. Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Great stuff.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
we really
everyone.
appreciate your time, the patience you've
Great.
had throughout the 3 days program. We really appreciate you a lot. And all I can say is God richly bless you. Whatever time you have spent here, you will not regret it. Let's go out there and then unite as Africans. When you see your fellow African from a different country, he's not a stranger. Relate with him as your brother or sister. Let's eschew that disunity spirit from us and then build our continent. I nearly said amen. All right. So over to you.
Not out of place, actually.
Okay. All right. So family, we have closed. You can now check out if you want to.
The closing remarks should be done by Sister Mavis Kolobe, the Vice President of the OAD for the Southern Africa. She's disposed. She's scheduled for the closing remarks. Please, Vice President, over to you.
Thank you. I thought we were done. I almost signed out. Yeah, to our moderator, thank you very much for the 3 days. We've enjoyed it. Our organizers, this has been very fruitful, and we are looking forward to many more conferences such as this, where we just sit down and discuss issues that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And a big thank you to our participants. Some of you have been here from day 1. You've sacrificed your time, day 1, day 2, day 3. We know you are very busy, and we are grateful that you made time for the 3 days, even if it's just 1 day. We are grateful that you joined us. Without you, this would have not been a success. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you too, and have a good night. My name has always been Ruth F.A. Gordon. Wherever you meet me, I respond to that name. So Thank you so much all for coming. It's been a great day having you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Ruth. You've done a very powerful job.